Shawn, it is so good to have you here. I wanted to just start off by saying that today what we're going to be talking about is the intersection of family, parenting, and work leadership, and really the wisdom derived from integrating work and life. And today we have Shawn Slusser. And Shawn, I'd love you to introduce yourself. And I'd also, after that, I'm going to share how I got to know Shawn. But Shawn, if you could just share a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, my background is actually in engineering. I came up through learning engineering and then studied business and kind of combined technology and business together. And I've worked at Infineon Technologies in the semiconductor company industry for the last 27 years, electronics industry. Most recently, I have taken on leading up what we call our digital go-to-market efforts. And so my background is sales and marketing over those years. Now I'm trying to take that experience and bring it into the digital sales and marketing world and translate the sales capability for Infineon globally to leverage digital. So that's a little bit what I've been doing. I've got three kids of my own, 26 going to be, 21 and 19. So my kids are a bit older now. When I started at the company, I didn't have any kids. And my wife and I have been married now for 32 years. So that's a little bit of personal behind me as well. So since we're going to talk family and work, I thought I should share that part too.
Yeah, of course. So, Shawn, I was thinking about this the other day, or actually just yesterday. We got to know each other because I was an intern at Infineon, I believe 20 years ago.
Amazing.
And, and I applied to the Infineon internship off monster.com. And the job posting said MBAs only. And somehow I got through that filter because I didn't have an MBA. And I recall going through the interview process and meeting the four or five people I was to meet that day. And then they were actually, if you can get past this final gentleman, Shawn, then you'll have the intern. And
Yeah, you were an impressive guy. So obviously you made it through. Even though we said we were looking for MBA, we wanted a business minded person. And
yes.
that's what you proved. You didn't need to have the degree. You showed that you had that mindset. And that's what we were looking for.
I appreciate that. Yeah, that was a wonderful time for me. And so we're gonna we're gonna talk about this intersection of family, parenting, and leadership. And personally, for me, this is extremely relevant. I have three kids. Been married 10 years now, and I have a small business, small management consulting firm. And so everything we're chatting about right now is extremely timely and relevant. So I'm really excited to talk about it with you from so many different perspectives. I'll start off, Shawn, asking you, can you share with me about the intersection of parenting, family, and work or leadership?
Yeah. I've always tried to find that right balance between work and raising a family. And it's taken years. As I said, my son's 27, sorry, 26 he's going to be. When I reflect back, like how was it working and where was my most enjoyable time and most effective time, I started to think about work life balance and started to realize that it was more than work life balance. Work life balance is about how do you make sure that you spend amount of time in the right place, but keeping them separate. What I started to realize is that the things I was learning at work helped me be a better parent, and the things that I was learning as a parent helped me to be a better leader. And it started to make me realize like it was a whole life integration kind of capability that was happening or experience that was happening, and I could help raise my kids with leadership principles. We can talk about that in a little bit. I could help. I was in sales, we'd learn about negotiations. So when I went out and need to get a new car, I could use negotiation skills to get a better deal. Speaking and communicating at work is super important. And that also you can bring to your kids. And so I just found that this integration was really happening, and it made it like more enjoyable to do both. And it wasn't about keeping the time separate or keeping your mind only in one place or the other. It was like, how can you fold these two worlds together to make you a better parent, to make you a better leader at work? And that we can explore today a little bit more in detail.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So why don't we jump into the professional side of this, and what is leadership in a professional perspective? What are your principles on leadership?
Yeah. Everybody has a certain style of leadership. I'll tell you my style and how I look at it. Doesn't mean everybody has to have the same, but my style is it's focuses on trying to inspire people to a future state, inspire people to contribute more and develop in themselves more and own things more, to have satisfaction in what they're doing too. It's not just a job. It has to be like we're building a better future together. So that's what I try to do is I try to bring in that there's an inspiring vision, and that in the team there's a set of expectations for how to be operating in the team, like integrity, like collaboration, like giving respect to your colleagues. So those are some of the things that are my leadership principles. And it's really important when you come into a new job that you're very clear in telling people, like, these are my expectations and this is our vision. And the vision you have to build together with the team. The expectations, you as a leader can come in and tell people, if you're in this team, this is what I expect, and give people that compass that they need. But then build this vision together. What we're doing on the digital side for ourselves at Infineon is we're trying to create this digital experience in the B2B world, but make it B2C, so business to consumer like in the B2B world. So that's our current vision that we're working on right now. So that's just a little high level of
Yeah.
kind of how I think about leadership.
Do you find, Sean, in that, because I heard two really important concepts there. One is to inspire on that vision, and then the other is to set expectations, but it also sounds really lay the foundation for what are the principles by which the team is operating in. And what, or perhaps this is a how question, but what are some of the practices that you try to do within your team to make that a reality in terms of building the principles into the mundane and some of the more interesting aspects of work and such? Like, how do you integrate those ideas of the principles throughout the day to day for someone?
Yeah. Those are two separate concepts. So let's talk about the vision first. I think the first thing you have to do when you come in as a new leader, and I did this in this current job, I wasn't a digital go to market expert. I was more in the sales side. So stepping in to listen, what is each person's expertise and their own vision of the future? So really taking the time to listen. And you shouldn't come in with, hey, I know the answer. This is what we need to do. Really, how do you listen to the experts that are on your team, trying to bring it all into an integrated picture? And once you have done enough of that kind of collection, then you need to be the visionary to try and translate it into a future picture for the team and play it back with them. So, like the current vision picture that we have took like 25 revisions to get there. Yeah, it wasn't just we just dropped it out. It was like it takes time, but it's pretty darn robust now. It's pretty good, and people are inspired by that vision picture. Now we're using that. We actually made it into a picture. We're actually using it
Mm,
to say, okay, where does your work fit into this? How is the value that you do contributing to that? And this is, we want to have true in 3 years from now, something that we give as a customer experience back. So we use the vision then to check our work. and set our priorities and make sure that on an individual level, people can see themselves in contributing in that. So
Sure.
that's the whole vision side. On the expectation side, here I think it just takes the leader to be very clear in writing down the expectations like on one page.
Yeah.
If you work for me and this team, here are my values and principles, and that's what I expect of the team. And actually to write them down and to bring those back up, to hold people accountable to those, to when people are violating something, it's really a reflection of you. If you let them be on your team and they aren't doing something that you think is the way they should behave, then it's a reflection on you. So you have to hold people accountable to that stuff too and call them out and say, hey, you're not being respectful to that person. That's not what I would do. And I expect our team to represent me. And we have a set of code of conduct here, a code of way of working together. So it's just repetitive. You just have to keep going at it. And I have this rule I call the 5 times rule. So sometimes as leaders, we think if we just tell people once, they get it.
Mm.
But honestly, the world is so distracting. Only like 20% is heard, I think. And so that's why it takes 5 times. You got to just repeat the same thing. That's why they do commercials, right? It's
Sure.
like your kids can want to buy car insurance now because of commercials, right? Even though they don't, they just repeat,
Yes.
repeat.
Yes.
So, anyways, it's about being repetitive until they know what you're going to say. And
Yes.
then they know if your job as a leader is like, how do you get what's in your mind into other people's minds? When you do that, then it unleashes and empowers, but it takes hard
Sure.
work.
Sure. Yeah. Sounds like it. It sounds like there's a practice there of you share what those principles are, but you're also in sharing when those principles are not met, you're helping to build awareness by sharing it with the individual because building the awareness muscle, I think, is a part of that picture. It's like going to the gym or eating healthy. You have to have awareness that those things make you feel better. Same thing here, that if someone's bringing awareness to the respect and integrity that is expected on a day, that someone is helping guide that, coach that into.
Yeah, absolutely. It's awareness, and then it's also habit building, right? You
Yes.
got to put it into a habit, and the only way to put it into a habit is to practice it and
Yeah.
be a role model yourself. And you're not going to be perfect at it either at times, so you got to also invite the team to hold you accountable if you ever violate any of your principles, and it happens.
Yeah.
But it's all about habits, like you said, going to the gym. Like awareness is one thing, that then practicing it step by step. This is
Yeah.
how you get there.
Yeah. Totally. Totally. That resonates so much. So why don't we jump into that same idea from leadership from a family and parenting perspective? And if you could share some of your thoughts there.
Yeah, this is really the part that was eye opening to me. It's if you think about it, your family is like a team. And this is where I was teaching or I was learning at work from a former leader that I worked for is you got to have a vision, you got to have got values and principles. And I asked my wife when my oldest son was 5, so this is now more than 20 years ago. I said, hey, let's try this. Let's come up with some family principles for our kids. We only had one at the time that was so simple that a 5-year old could know it. And then I said, it's like something that they have to know when dad's not around. So what would dad always say? And my wife and I
Yeah.
came up with what we call TKLLW. I wasn't a great marketing guy at that time, clearly, because it should have spelled a word, but anyways, it didn't spell a word. It's just TKLLW, and we stuck with it. And let me just tell you what it is. T stands for tell the truth. K stands for be kind. L stands for learn something new every day. The next L is about laugh and have fun. And W is work hard to get what you want. And later we added another one, H. take care of your health. As we were
Mm.
older, we started to realize maybe we need to also worry about exercise and eating right and all that sort of thing. And it actually was my oldest son who was the one who told us that when he was probably around 20.
Mm.
So these family principles were like the work principles that I would put in place for the team at work, but now I was putting it in place for my family. And it was kind of like this was the way we always would remind the kids these are the things you got to keep in mind, how you make your decisions. And think of it a little bit like a boundary fence. Like you can live inside of this fence doing whatever you like, but you now know when you're on the other side of the fence if you're not telling the truth or if you're not having fun, like you're being too much of a jerk to people, you're not being kind. Or so those are the kind of things. And then we would use these to discipline the kids too. We'd be like, hey, you're not being kind to your brother. I told you that that's one of the family principles. Get back in
Mm.
line. And we would just repeat this over the years. And that is one of the things that if you ask my kids, they know what TKLW is. And I think
Yeah.
it really made a big difference in my kids when I'm not there that they have a compass for what's right and
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah. I appreciate that idea of a compass when you are not present, because I think whether it's your team at work or whether it's your kids or family, this idea of having some way to, well, as a parent, clearly you want to always know your kids will be okay. And so a baseline set of principles to know that they know some way to operate in this world, which has so much, they're going to experience so much that can give some peace to not only you, but to them is a wonderful gift. And then on the work side, you can't be present for everything, clearly. And it's that same thing that you want to know that your team, your colleagues are representing each other, you, the company, in a similar manner. And what I find interesting about all of this, though, is that I think that for a large, these things are very easy to say, and it's another thing to bring them in to the home. It's another thing to bring them into the team, into your work, etc. And so I'm just appreciating how you're sharing about how you did bring it in, or with your kid when one son wasn't kind, and all of this, and the repetition, the 5 times, it makes a lot of sense to me, Shawn.
Yeah. And I give you another example of like how TKLW helped with my leadership principles. You asked me, what are my leadership principles? It's actually TKLW. And so
Yeah.
it's like when I knew who I was for my own values at home and what I wanted my kids to become and follow, it also helped me know who I was, that I could be myself at work. And actually, my expectations at work are exactly TKLW. I don't call them TKLW, but I do actually share
Mm.
that when I meet people who join our team. I share our TKLW ones to the team and I say, what does it mean? It means you got to have high integrity. You got to be open and curious to learn. You got to be respectful to people. You got to laugh and have fun and don't take everything so serious. Take some time for yourself to have fun and even work hard. Yeah, you don't get anything for free. You got to work at it. And same thing for
Yeah.
health. It's you got to have a vacation every once in a while too. So it's not a luxury; it's a necessity to recharge yourself. So this is just an example of what I mean by the integration. It's like by applying those thinking about having values at home, it made me do TKLW. But then when I did that, it made me realize, gee, that can make me a better leader at work too. And this kind of yin and yang kind of just goes through
Hmm.
year after year of these kind of examples, which is why I call it integration. You just get like
Yeah.
stronger by learning in both directions. It's really cool. It makes your happiness go up, I think.
I think of it in this way, or I'm curious if this is how it's coming for you. it, for a large part, there there could be a lot of, I've heard a lot of folks, they have their work self and then they have their home and family self. And some of that tension brings a lot of stress, right? They're trying to be all work and really focused at work, and then they're trying to be loving, joyful partner and parent at home. And the juxtaposition of those two energies conflicts, and it my guess is it would create stress,
Yeah.
or I will say I think it creates stress. So uh, but I'm curious from you, Shawn, as you're looking at this and at Infineon, and also as your kids have become adults, what do you think that the different generations could learn from each other? And I would say the older generation to the younger generation, and the younger to the older even, is actually a follow-up there. How can everyone learn something from each other?
Yeah, I think that like the my parents' generation probably was more focus on work or focus on family, pick one or the other. And you heard of workaholics and things like that. That's what I mean. Then I think came like work life balance, which is make sure that you think about both and you allocate the amount of time you want to do to both. You can't just be one side or the other side. Try to find that right balance. And now I think it's more the integration thing that I'm trying to describe here today is I think that there's a more fulfilling way. And that's, I think, acknowledging that there's a different generation kind of way of thinking about it. And that just because the previous generations thought about it one way, you should always maybe adapt. And this is the current way I think we should consider it. And to be yourself at work and to be yourself at home, you mentioned just a moment ago, it can be stressful if you're different behaviors. And one of the reasons why I have stayed working at Infineon so long is that Infineon and myself have been like having the, you can be yourself at Infineon, I guess I want to say. So Infineon has a really high level of importance around how you do things, not only what you do. We actually rate people on the how side. And it's all about culture of how you work as a team and things like that. It's super aligned with my TKLW expectations and such. So I think people might say, "Oh, you can't be your same person at work," but I'm here to tell you that there are companies that will allow you to do that. And so if you're not feeling like you can do that today, then maybe you need to check what kind of company you work for. But that's one of the reasons I've been at Infineon for so many years, 27 years, is because I could be myself at work and at home, not
Yeah,
two different people. So don't, I guess, think about it like the old generation where there was two different worlds. Try to find a place that you feel you can be yourself and you can do this integration thing. Yeah, because it does reduce stress. And
mhm.
yeah, it's just I think a more happy way of living.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Shawn, if you were to speak to your younger self and look at yourself, perhaps when you were just having a kid, just taking on leadership roles, and you were to, I would be curious in two different perspectives, in a couple of different perspectives, and one to help folks listening relate to it potentially more. What questions were you potentially asking yourself when you and your younger self when you were in the situation of becoming a leader and potentially having kids? And what do you wish you could tell that younger Shawn to make that journey just a little bit easier, just maybe to reduce some of that stress? And I'm assuming, Shawn, that you were worked your way into this idea of integration,
Yeah,
and it wasn't necessarily where you started.
exactly.
But if you were, that's really amazing.
No, no, I've been doing this thing a long time. It didn't get there in the first step at all. You got to
Yeah.
figure it out.
So if you could think about younger Shawn, and I think that might help a lot of us relate to what you're sharing a bit.
I think one of the things that I realize now that I could have done more in asking myself is like to know who you are, to know what's your purpose and what's your principles. Like the TKLW stuff, I'm proud that we did that. But my dad recently passed, and this is a couple of months ago. And I, my dad was a quiet guy, so he never really talked a lot. But the day after he passed, I reflected on what did he teach us? What did he leave his wisdom and his principles of how he lived life? And fortunate for me, I got a chance to also interview him, like in this same way, while he was in the hospital about 5 weeks before he passed. I said, Dad, I like these kind of podcasts that you and I are doing now about wisdom. And tell me your wisdom. Tell me what you want me to know about how to live life. And it's actually a little emotional for me right now. He told me, and we spent actually about 4 hours talking about this, and my kids were actually with me too. So we got really a great chance to explore what was his mind thinking and principles. He never wrote this stuff down. He never explicitly taught us it like TKLW or anything. He just kind of lived it day by day. And I after that interview and after reflecting, I wrote down his principles for myself so I could teach my own kids. And I want to just read the principles for you. There's 8 of them, if that's okay.
That would be wonderful, Shawn. Thank you.
So, my dad taught us that I'm going to just do them real quick here. We should always dream big. Anything is possible. I'm reading them here. That you should support others who have big dreams, and that you got to keep an unwavering positive mindset no matter what happens along life's path. You can always have the ability to make it happen or have a new start, and that you shouldn't ever give up. Keep working to make your dreams come true, but you got to be patient because things may take longer than you want. Embody an abundance of love by helping others and giving them the benefit of the doubt, and being generous to others and don't keeping score, and smiling and laughing and enjoy life. Being a friend, especially to those who need it most. To put your family first, keeping them as your biggest priority, working hard to provide for them and protect them and help them develop their talents, and enjoy yourself, but also live within your means. Being reliable and trustworthy so people know that they can count on you. Being in control of your emotions. Don't letting your emotions reaction get out of control and hurt or damage relationships. And lastly, you got to listen more than you talk so that you can really understand what's being said or what's going on. My dad was not much of a talker, he was really more of a listener. And I wrote these down because I wish I would have wrote this kind of stuff down earlier in life. And that's probably one of the things that if I was young, yeah, if I had to do it over again, I would try to get this stuff more conscious. That's to me that the TKLW stuff is in there, but I never really took the time to figure out how I got there until now. This is like in the
Yeah.
last 60 days. And that I wrote because I read it at his eulogy too. I did his eulogy, and I wanted to share that with the people who were there, including my kids. So I wrote it down for my kids. And I share it now because I hope to inspire other people to do the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
Look at the other generations and what they're teaching and saying, and they've lived ahead of us. So figure it out because it gives you a head start. You don't have to figure it out later. And if I can give this to my kids when they're 20, I hope that it gives them a head start.
Yeah. That's so beautiful, Shawn. And just to imagine you having that experience of being with your kids, with your father, sharing these beautiful things. And I'm sure it brought up so much of your relationship to all these things that you didn't know were the invisible threads of the foundation that made you you, and in turn made your kids who they are too. And I really appreciate that. And
Yeah.
makes me personally really reflect on what I would write down.
When I wrote down the eulogy, I had to practice it like probably 10 times because I was just emotionally couldn't make it through the whole time. And I have to give this speech, right? I practiced it once with one of the times to my youngest son, and he started to cry. And I said, "Why are you crying?" He said, "Because I see myself in those principles." So it's, again, we never talked about it, but it was passed through this invisible way. And I think to be more aware of this stuff will make you a better parent. And you can also do the same thing at work to be more precise with the principles and expectations. And ask yourself, do you have family principles that you wrote down? And then have you explained those to your kids? And have you done it 5 times? Or maybe for kids, it's 20 times. And that's how they're going to know what's right or wrong from you. And that's your job as the leader. You're a parent is not just a manager. A parent is a leader. And a leader has to show them the future and show them what's right or wrong. And if you don't, the rest of the world will do it to your kids because of all the distraction that happens in this world through social media and through hanging out with groups of kids. So it's our job as parents and leaders to give that to them to know what's right or wrong. And I'm surprised at how many kids don't have that. They don't get that. So don't make the mistake of missing that opportunity is my message. Do it.
Yeah,
Do it when they're early. Do it when they're young.
that's beautiful, Shawn. And I think a perfect way for us to close up our conversation here. Thank you so much, Shawn, for taking this time, for sharing this. And I'm really looking forward to sharing what we talked about here with a lot of folks. And I'm looking forward to talking again with you soon.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation and to share this with more people than just you and I think my wife and I have talked about like how by sharing things like this, we can help other young families as well. That's passing wisdom early
Yeah,
to the earlier generation, the younger generation, and that's what we think that we have to do is help other people in that way. And so this here helped me to get the message out even more, and I hope to inspire others to take action at work and in their family about this having principles and guiding the team. So I look forward to continue our discussion another time too.
that sounds wonderful. Thank you again, Shawn.
Thanks, Krishan.